Brantford. We're going to resuming debate, and the honourable member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to start off by thanking the member from Saskatoon West for bringing forward this motion, this important motion on Canada's housing crisis and what this government should be doing to deal with that. And this housing crisis is widespread and very diverse across the country. It's different in every community, every city, every rural area. It goes from rising homelessness to ridiculously expensive housing markets that exclude first-time buyers, rural seniors that have nowhere to go when they want to downsize, to low vacancy rates that are often exacerbated, at least in my riding, by online vacation rentals, to crowded and often mold-ridden homes in remote Indigenous communities. Now, when I meet with mayors in my riding, when I meet business people, when I meet with service groups, the priority that they bring to me is almost always the same. It's housing, housing, housing. And I recently met with the mayor of Trail. Trail's a small city with plenty of issues facing it. It's home to one of the biggest lead zinc smelters in the world, owned by Teck. And so international mining markets are important to Trail. The cost of power for that smelter is very important to Trail. The local hospital is in the middle of a big renovation. That's important. The local police force is understaffed. But when I ask the mayor what's her biggest priority, it's housing. I go up the road to the town of Fruitvale. The mayor there said his priority was a project they're working on, an old school property they purchased. They want to demolish the school and build housing. But it'll cost $1 million just to demolish the old school, and Fruitvale is a very small town. Just down the road, the village of Montrose, only 420 homes there. They need housing for their seniors, so their seniors can stay in Montrose as they age, instead of having to move to Trail or Castlegar. When I recently talked with employment agencies in Oliver, I heard that many local businesses could not fill openings. Hotels were hiring, seniors' care homes were hiring. They were desperate for employees. Restaurants had signs on the tables apologizing for slow service because they only had one waiter working. And the reason? People come to fill these positions, they can't find housing, so they move on. The most ironic story in this vein was a service agency in Penticton who received grant money to coordinate their affordable housing program. They hired someone, that person arrived, and then gave up the job. Why? They couldn't find housing. Oh. And this is a crisis that's really hitting the Canadian economy. It's more, there are very personal impacts, but it's also hitting our economy. It's expensive to have this crisis going on for Canada as a whole. And we've heard that the federal Liberal government abandoned the housing sector in 1993, a situation maintained by both Conservative and Liberal governments since then. We've heard that 1.7 million Canadians live in core housing need. But I'd like to provide a perspective from my riding of South Okanagan, West Kootenay. The South Okanagan Vital Signs Report provides a report card on many aspects of life in that part of the riding, the west part of my riding. It gives housing a C- based on low vacancy rates, high rent costs, and high housing debt levels. Rental vacancy rates in the area around 1%, about half the national average. 50% of people in my hometown of Penticton are paying more than the renters are paying more than 30% of their income on rent. I used to live in a little village called Naramata. The average house price there is $740,000. In Penticton, it's only $476,000. Cheap. But who can afford that? What kind of young couple can afford to buy a house for $470,000? That's the average cost of a house. Just east of the Okanagan Valley is the Kettle Valley, which suffered catastrophic flooding this spring. This is another kind of housing crisis. The city of Grand Forks lost many homes and businesses to the high water of the Kettle and Granby rivers. It's created an emergency need for housing, and the local city council and regional district board have been working tirelessly for months to meet this need. The provincial government has come through with millions of dollars, and local governments are waiting to hear back from a significant ask to the Federal Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund that will allow them to proceed with a long-term solution. And one of the big issues in rural areas is providing housing for seniors who want to stay in their hometowns, but to scale down to smaller homes so they don't have to take care of their large acreages. Much of my riding is very rural, and a good example of that is the beautiful Slocan Valley. Most of the housing there, about 98%, obviously, is in single detached homes. And about half of the Slocan Valley population is over 50 years of age now, and that proportion will increase dramatically over the next decade. And about a quarter of those seniors are living below the poverty line. There are wait lists of over 10 years to get into subsidized non-market housing in Nelson and Castlegar. As one community member put it, we have a community hall every 10 kilometers in this valley. We have schools, we have graveyards, but we have little to address seniors' housing needs, supports in between. So the Slocan Valley Seniors Housing Society stepped up to the plate, and I want to spend some time here outlining what this small but energetic and talented group of citizens, many of them seniors themselves, have accomplished. They started with plans for a 10-unit lodge in the community of Passmore. A massive community effort raised over $600,000 in funds to help make Passmore Lodge a reality. Seniors and all people of all ages hiked for housing around the Silvery Slocan 250-kilometer loop, raising over $50,000. Local sawmills donated the construction lumber, the huge beams for the central common area, and the beautiful birch and all the cabinets for wainscoting were all made locally. The common rooms, tables, and chairs were designed and built by a Kootenai School for the Arts student. An agreement was negotiated with the general contractor to hire local EI reachbacks for some of the construction crew, bringing the cost down. The Real Estate Foundation, the Vancouver Foundation dug deep, and the Columbia Basin Trust saw this community effort and stepped up. Finally, a $940,000 mortgage on an operating agreement with BC Housing was secured, and Passmore Lodge was opened in 1999. And inspired by that success, the Society immediately began plans for a similar project in the village of Slocan, and they've recently opened 12 units of affordable housing there. These are in very, very small communities. These are huge efforts that have been successful. And there's other success stories around my riding like that. In Okanagan Falls, the South Skaha Housing Society is building 26 units of affordable housing, and there are similar projects that have gone on in Naramata and other communities. Now, Madam Speaker, I'd like to move now to the topic of homelessness, which is a crisis within this housing crisis. Many might associate homelessness with urban areas, but it is just as tragic a situation in smaller towns and cities. What we need is for government and community agencies to come together and simply create homes for the homeless. Penticton has become a model case for this cooperative, integrated approach. An initiative called 100 Homes has brought together more than a dozen groups with a clear vision to house the homeless, and their project has been very successful. They've already exceeded their goal of 100 homes, have produced 133 units as of last July. They're now in the process of setting new goals with a view to housing all of the 400 people in need in Penticton. One of the valuable lessons that 100 Homes has learned in the past months is that funding is needed for support services as well as housing units themselves. Given both social support and a roof over their heads, many homeless people can quickly return to normal lives. But everywhere I go in my riding, I find groups that are doing amazing work for the homeless and other disadvantaged people. In Trail, the Career Development Services has Getting to Home program that provides critical support for individuals who need to find a home. In Castlegar, there's Chrissy's Place, named in honor of Chrissy Archibald, a young woman who had dedicated her life to helping the homeless before being killed in a terrorist incident in London. While Chrissy's Place doesn't focus on just the homeless, it does provide a wide range of supports for people in need through the Castlegar and District Community Services Society. Madam Speaker, We need bold action from this government now to tackle this housing crisis. We've done it before. I grew up on a Veterans Land Act subdivision in Penticton. I still live in the house that I grew up in. After the war, this government built thousands and thousands and thousands of homes across this country to help the people returning from war and rebuild this country. And we can do that again. And I'm very happy to support this motion. Thank you.